next guest, we're joined with the one and only KJ No. Man, you are the person to speak to this morning. KJ No is a journalist, political analyst, writer, and teacher specializing in the geopolitics of the Asia Pacific region. He's contributor to the book Capitalism on a Ventilator, once censored by Amazon. It is now available at iacenter.org. KJ, how are you doing this morning? You doing all right?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Um, I have been blown away by what is taking place in South Korea. You sent me that link, and I think my mom sent me like 20 minutes later, says, "Oh my God, have you seen what's taking place in South Korea?" Um, the president of South Korea, out of the blue, near midnight, screams for dictatorial powers and declares martial law. The guy who's running the martial law, the commander, goes to shut down media and the political space, meaning all protests stops, all political activity stops, and all media at that point is being controlled by the government. The military comes out, the cops come out, you have protesters streaming to parliament, you have the parliamentarians streaming to get back to parliament. 190 of them get in, voted down. No, this is done. You're not going to allow martial law. The police and the military blow off Congress, meaning Parliament, and continue trying to get in. And you get this image of all of these people with cameras, with barricades, standing there, holding back the cops and holding back the military as the Parliament strikes it down. Like just astonishing scenes that are taking place. The president, after having withering opposition, backs away. And in backing away, he lifts this martial law thing. From my point of view, the president should be impeached or the president should resign immediately. What he did was outrageous. There was nothing that was taking place that legitimized him taking dictatorial powers in the way that he did, especially since he was trying to undermine the ability of the National Assembly to oversee what he was doing. He literally tried to stop them from doing that using the media, using the military to do so. Now, is anything I said is untrue, or do you need to correct anything I said? Because I wanted to give a base for us to have the conversation because I am mind blown by this. Give me your thoughts.
No, it's. I think you're right on all of the points. Just to kind of a little bit more detail.
Please.
The president declared martial law at 10:30 in the evening when everybody was in pajamas and just about ready to go to sleep. And then next thing you know, hundreds of National Assembly members, were running probably with their pajamas still on underneath their clothes, trying to get to the National Assembly building, where they were blocked off not just by the police, but by special warfare operations. These are the Korean, Green Team, Green Beret. Paratroopers, so they were blocking entry, and you could see that they were all kitted up, for full combat. Tactical vests, night vision goggles, assault rifles, and pistols, and they were ready to, commit a bloodbath. And remember, although South Korea has the authority, the president has the authority to declare martial law. He has to notify the National Assembly immediately. And then if the National Assembly rescinds it or rejects it, then he has to go along with that immediately. But one of the things that happened when he declared martial law is the order was given that nobody was allowed to enter the National Assembly building, right? So you knew exactly what was going on.
Which is why I call it illegal. I mean, because he, for one, under the Constitution, yes, the president can do so, but he can do so under certain conditions.
Yes.
Those conditions weren't met. He did this out the blue, and he did so late at night to prevent anybody from being able to respond to it.
Yes.
Like all of this stuff was so illegal. Like it's so over the top to just say, yeah, I'm a dictator now. I'm a dictator now. I'm
Exactly.
sorry,
Yes.
KJ, please continue.
No, no,
It's
no.
just
I mean,
mind-blowing.
this was a coup, or technically what we would call a self coup to establish a dictatorship. But by 1 p.m., 190 assembly members were able to claw their way through the police barricades. Then they got inside the National Assembly chambers and they started to vote. And by 1 p.m., they had actually declared, they had rescinded the martial law declaration. In the meantime, the special warfare forces are trying to force their way into the National Assembly and into the chambers, but they were barricaded and blocked by, civilians. And so this is an extraordinary event. A few more points. Why did Yoon Suk-yeol do this? I mean, this was a 6-hour coup, the world's shortest coup, as far as I know. But why did Yoon Suk-yeol do this? He was facing, that's the special operations forces, that are trying to break their way into the chambers where the National Assembly members are trying to vote. Okay, so it's citizens barricading special ops from actually entering and trying to prevent the vote from happening. But why did he do this? Remember, you declare martial law if there is a war happening, or if there is an imminent threat of invasion, or if there's some massive national emergency like an earthquake or something, and order has broken down. That's when you declare national law. But there was nothing like that happening. The only thing that was happening that Yoon Suk-yeol claimed was, he said that there were North Korean threats. And essentially by North Korean threats, what he meant was that the opposition party was thwarting him in the legislature. They had shaved a tiny amount, I think it was 0.3% of his budget, and he, just couldn't take that. And they were also preparing to investigate his wife, who has been accused of corruption. And so this for him was the national emergency. I mean, these are all personal issues, but this was a national emergency. This was, the North Korean threat as he framed it. And then he went ahead and declared martial law. And this is not simply unconstitutional or illegal for Koreans. The two scariest words you can utter, simply because of their history, is martial law. Martial law means, torture, disappearances, random deaths, random killing. It's something that Koreans have a visceral, lived memory of. And so when he did that, the entire country erupted. And that's why so many people ran out, once again, practically in their pajamas. They were not letting this. The National Assembly is on an island, and there's a long bridge that goes there, and apparently that was blocked off to traffic. So people were running along the bridge and rushing to get to the National Assembly building in order to challenge the special forces troops. I mean, it's an extraordinary moment. And it is, as the Koreans have said, they say this is a crime against history, because they've lived through that history and they never want that to happen again.
No, I agree with you. It is. I look, from my point of view, whether it's Trump doing it, whether it's Hillary Clinton low level doing it and not accepting the results of the race, there is something deeply unethical. There's a radical loss of credibility and trust when a leader is given that much power. I mean, because the reality of it is, like, the population is endowing him with power, with this idea that they trust him to use that power wisely and in the best interest of South Korea. They didn't give him that power to get frustrated with the fact that they were investigating his wife and that they shaved 3% off of his budget. And so his response is to freak out and scream, "This is now a dictatorship." Like, that is so beyond the pale that he has to be removed. Have they taken any action to get rid of him? Because there's no way they can allow him to stay in that office. From my understanding, the defense minister has resigned.
Yes, they've tendered their resignations. Six of his top officials, including the defense minister, the minister for national security, etc., all the top national security officials have tendered their resignation.
I'm sorry.
We
No,
don't know.
please keep going. I'm sorry. That was a mistake.
Yeah. We don't know if they've been accepted or not. Yesterday, there was a huge rally by the 6 opposition parties calling for both the resignation and the impeachment of Yoon Suk-yeol. The way that they see it is that this is a driver who is too drunk to drive. You have to take away the keys. You cannot allow him to continue to steer the ship of state. They have to take away the keys from him. And currently, as we speak, if I'm not mistaken, there are impeachment proceedings. An impeachment bill has been submitted to the National Assembly, and within the next few days, probably by Friday, we will know if he has been impeached or not. They need 2/3 of the assembly, 200 votes, to rescind the martial law. They got 190 people into the National Assembly, and all of them voted to rescind martial law. And they need 10 more votes in order to impeach the president, after which it goes to the Constitutional Court, and it takes another few months. But they're very close to having those 201 votes in order to impeach him. Now, will Yoon allow this to happen? This remains to be seen. The martial
how does he stop it?
Well, it's a complex procedure, but remember, when the National Assembly rescinded the martial law declaration at 1 p.m., the martial law commander that he had appointed refused to follow those directions. And he said he needed to hear from the president himself. And then I think it was 4 p.m. in the morning, 4:20 p.m. in the morning, Yoon Suk-yeol finally came out and said, okay, I was just kidding. Everybody, I pulled the fire alarm, but there really is no fire. It's all good. Everybody go home. And so he rescinded it. But the thing is, Yoon is fighting for his life, because if he gets impeached, then he no longer has immunity, and he will be prosecuted for all kinds of crimes, not the least of which is, as far as the Koreans are concerned, his declaring martial law without authority and without justification is considered to be sedition. That is a crime against the Constitution. It's a criminal action, and it's criminal conspiracy, because he had a whole group of people. Apparently, he was preparing this for 3 months.
Oh, are you so? Wow.
Not kidding. Yes, 3 months. This was 3 months in the planning.
When I opened the show, I started my monologue and I pointed out that it's a crime. I say he needs to be, like, when you hear, let's say, people who are doing coups, people who are collaborators, those people are usually shot. And I'm not saying anybody should be shot. I'm just pointing out that there needs to be a heavy repudiation of this. And that's typically done through law. And if they're going to do it through law, he literally tried to kill the Republic, using his position to do so, and having a group of people around him that was willing to go along with him in killing the South Korean Republic. That is not something that they could stand for. And yeah, I agree. There should be jail over something like this. I guess my question is, to me, it's obvious that they should impeach him. I mean, the leader of his own party came out and said this was wrong.
Yes.
Meaning he couldn't even get his own political party to go along with him, I suspect, because what that leader of that party knew, that if this went through, even his powers were gone. Meaning they were trying to nuke Parliament, not the National Assembly. So certainly they have the votes to impeach him.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So once again, the leader of the PPP, which is the ruling party which Yoon Suk-yeol belongs to, the chair of the PPP, opposed the action. And apparently during this 6-hour coup period, they sent special operations forces to apprehend the leader, Han Dong-un. I mean, they had handcuffs. They were, armed to the teeth, and they had zip ties and handcuffs. They were going to kidnap him. They also sent troops to the opposition party headquarters as well. So this was like serious stuff. And as I said, it was prepared apparently 3 months in advance. Yoon Suk-yeol went to this high school called Chungam, and then starting in September, he started to place all his high school friends in the top places in government, in particular, the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of National Security, etc. And so at that point, people said, this is very, very strange. This is dangerous stuff going on. And there was a lawmaker who said that, it looks like Yoon is preparing for martial law. And everybody laughed at him. And now, everybody's saying, yeah, you were right on. This was coming. You saw this coming. This train was building steam for a very, very long time.
So so the corruption is not just his wife, it's him included. So
yes. And he's the most unpopular South Korean president in probably in a very long time, since the dictators. His current, popularity is, I think, approval rating is about 17%.
Oh, that's going to go less. That's going to be lower than that.
Oh,
if
yeah.
he gets like 0.3, he's going to be in the negative numbers at this point. Like that's even worse though, KJ. Like the idea that it's one thing if you're hugely popular.
Mm-hmm.
It would be bad even in that situation. But at the very least, in that case, you had a majority of the public backing you. He is demonstratively unpopular. And it's like, I am so unpopular and I can't get anything done. The public is voting against me. They came out in the last election to vote against me. So screw it. I'm just going to take it all. Wow. Just wow.
But do you know where he is popular? Do you know who he is popular with?
Who?
With the Washington crowd, with the U.S. national security state. He is Mr. American Pie.
Is he?
Remember, he went to the White House and he sang Don McLean's American Pie.
Oh, that was this guy.
This is the guy, right? He sold out the country for an autographed guitar.
So he believes that America Power will keep him in office despite. Is that what he thinks?
I think so. The American national security state is really the force behind Yoon Suk-yeol. This is a man, he is like the Juan Guaido of South Korea. Absolutely no qualifications whatsoever. He had never been a politician in his life prior to suddenly become the president of South Korea. He had never held office. He had never won an election. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, dark horse, here he is. He is the president of South Korea. And he won with the narrowest, margin in South Korean electoral history. But just before he was elected, he got this like huge media platform on the most influential journal in the Western world, which is Foreign Affairs. This is the foreign policy journal of the Council on Foreign Relations. And he got this like huge spread where he got to confess his, allegiance to the doctrine of the faith of U.S. hegemony. And he said that, South Korea will have its own Indo-Pacific strategy, and South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy is exactly the same as the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy, which is all about encircling and waging hybrid and kinetic war against China. That's what got him elected. And when he was elected, all the champagne corks in Washington blew up. Everybody was celebrating. This was early Christmas. This is Christmas in Washington, all the way around. So they were exulting that Yoon Suk-yeol was elected. But he, among all the Korean presidents, is probably the most unqualified. As I said, the Guaido. He's the, he's really a ridiculous personage to be holding the highest office, and yet the U.S. was so happy because they knew that when he got elected, everything they want on their Christmas list would get done, and it was done. He built relations with Japan, allowed the South Korean military essentially to merge with the Japanese military, the military of the former colonizing country of South Korea. Now they're in a tripartite alliance. And Washington really, really loves Yoon. That's why they invited him and had him do a minstrel show for them, right? I mean, that's his role for the U.S. national security state. But the Koreans despise him.
So politically, so there's the Democratic Party, which is the opposition party. That is the majority party, however, in the National Assembly, the one that is trying to cut his budget. I guess there are two questions. Politically, where does he fall? He is considered a right winger. I'm not entirely
extreme right wing. He belongs to the party that is simply the succession of the dictators, Park Chung-hee, Nomuhyun, No Tae-woo, Chun Doo-hwan. They're all dictators. He belongs to that party. They keep changing their name because they want to deceive people, but it's the same party, the same people. These are the fascists, the extreme conservatives.
Now, why would the public put fascists in government if they, like, for example, in France, the National Rally. Well, it's called something else. Well, National Rally. I just call them that. Because of their vestiges going back to the Second World War. Well, they're in Vichy France. They are literally kept out of government, even when the overwhelming majority of the public voted for them. Meaning they got like 50-something%. But because of the way the parties were working together in the first and second round, they were able to keep them out of government in regards to out of power. So Marie Le Pen wasn't able to take office. It's not the National Front. It used to be the National Front. It's the National Rally, I think it's called today.
Yes.
But why wouldn't South Korea think the same way? I mean, wouldn't the vestiges of dictatorship be emblazoned in their minds of, this is a no. I don't care if you change your name. This is a no. Or was it that the Democratic Party in South Korea failed so miserably that the right was able to take power? What happened? How did this situation take place? How did he get in power?
It's a good question, and there's a complex answer to it. If you look at the progressive opposition, they come down from Kim Dae-jung to Nomuhyun, and then Moon Jae-in. Moon was the most recent progressive president. And these people all come out of the radical student left, what we call the 386 generation. These were people who were in their 30s in the 1980s, and they were fighting against the military dictatorship. So they're really like the SDS of Korean politics. Moon Jae-in, it was very rare, it was very unusual that Moon Jae-in actually got elected, because prior to that, the president before that, who was also impeached, was the daughter of the dictator. Okay. So, why did they, elect the daughter of the dictator? Many reasons, but you can attribute it to, the way that elections are conducted in South Korea, the ways in which media campaigns are done, and the ways in which opposition candidates are blacklisted and undermined and taken down through dirty tricks. That's the quick answer. But nevertheless, the South Koreans rose up, what they call the Candlelight Revolution. Something like 20% of South Korea's population came out onto the streets. Tens of millions of people came out onto the streets and essentially demanded the resignation of Park Geun-hye. Her popularity was like 4%, which is essentially 0% if you consider the margin of error. And eventually she was impeached and was imprisoned, actually, sentenced to a very, very long prison sentence for corruption. the prosecutor who prosecuted her was actually the current president, Yoon Suk-yeol. Okay, so that's how his star rose. But he had no political experience, and he had never, held political office. He was appointed prosecutor, and this is also context. He had actually failed the bar exam 8 times. He was a kind of a playboy born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Failed the bar exam 8 times. On the 9th time, he passed it, squeaked through, and then through a series of opportunistic maneuvers, rose to become the chief prosecutor, which is like the attorney general, and then reading the political winds, he decided that he was going to prosecute the daughter of the dictator, even though he belonged to the party of the dictator. So there was some internal, factional fighting. He was able to prosecute and convict her. And in the meantime, the previous president, Moon Jae-in, had designated a successor who was the mayor of Seoul. Seoul is, the most important city in South Korea. It's, it's like a fourth of the population. And anybody who is the mayor of Seoul is kind of a prime candidate to become the president. And he was also part of this 386 SDS radical generation. And he would have fit right in and continued the progressive agenda of Moon, including reconciliation with North Korea. Well, what happened a short while before the election is he died a very, very mysterious death. Okay, so the candidate that they wanted died suddenly, and they said it was suicide, but there are too many questions around that. And so then the progressive DP was left without a candidate. They rapidly brought in this person called Lee Jae-myung, who is now the lead opposition candidate. Lee Jae-myung is a contrast with Yoon Suk-yeol because they were both, they both passed the bar exam. But in the case of Lee Jae-myung, he was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth like Yoon Suk-yeol. He actually only had a primary school education. After primary school, he went and started working in sweatshops and factories. And, in these sweatshops, he got his arm mangled twice. And so he's technically disabled. He cannot use, I think it's his left arm, which is completely mangled. He's disabled. But even so, working working as a sweatshop worker inside a rubber factory, he went to night school classes and was able to pass the high school GED equivalency exam, and then was able to go to university. And then in university studied law. And after studying law, he aced the bar exam and then became, a lawyer, and then moved up, the judicial and political ranks. So it's such a contrast with Yoon Suk-yeol. One person is born in the lap of luxury, the other person is, a factory worker, and they're both facing off against each other in national elections. And Lee Jae-myung came within inches of winning the election. So there's still questions as to how fair this election was and whether there were dirty tricks involved. But after Yoon Suk-yeol is elected, the champagne corks go off in Washington. And the first thing that Yoon Suk-yeol does, and this is very interesting to note, is that he declares that he's going to move the presidential mansion, the Blue House, into the building of the National Defense Building. Okay, let me say that again. It's like, let's say Biden was elected.
Moving into the Pentagon.
Into the Pentagon, and the Pentagon has to move out of the Pentagon. So Biden says, I don't want to live in the White House. I want to move into the Pentagon. Everybody move my stuff out of the White House, move it into the Pentagon, and Pentagon, you go somewhere else. This was his first move.
What?
I'm not kidding you. Yes,
And
exactly.
why did he do that?
We don't know, but people think that he was superstitious, that there was some feng shui practitioner who told him that every president who has been in the White House has come to a bad end. And that is true. Sorry, the Blue House, the presidential mansion, has come to a bad end. That much is actually true. And so apparently, according to rumor mill, his feng shui practitioner said, you need to get out of there. You can't be there. You need to move somewhere else. And so instead of moving into the Blue House, he was staying inside his luxury apartment in Gangnam. And then it took several months to prepare the Yongsan, National Army building for his residence. And in the meantime, there were hundreds of police that were escorting him from his private apartment, to the government buildings every day. And while this was happening, there was this huge disaster in Itaewon, the crowd crush disaster, where 159 young people were killed on Halloween. They got crammed together in a crowd. The crowd fell over. Next thing you knew, 159 people were trampled and suffocated.
Wow.
And all of this kind of signaled that Yoon Suk-yeol didn't know how to run the government, because what he had done was he had put his cronies into all the top positions, including his, kind of public safety positions. Nobody knew what they were doing. So you had these kind of immense civil catastrophes. So that should have sent the message already to not only the public, but to Washington, that this is a person who doesn't know what he's doing. But of course, they were just so intoxicated with the fact that here they had the perfect stooge. They had Mr. American Pie, and he was going to fulfill their Christmas, shopping list, which he did. But they didn't realize what a liability he is. And right now, what he's created a legitimacy crisis, not only for South Korean politics. He's actually created a legitimacy crisis for the U.S. itself. This is the U.S.'s client, quisling president, and it looks like he's going to fall soon. So the question is Washington going to continue to back him, or are they going to, see if they can usher him out the back door slowly? We'll see.
Wow. Amazing. I'm curious, last question. If he is impeached, or if he is removed, who takes power?
The prime minister takes power in a caretaker government, and then within a very short period of time, they have to hold new elections. If they do hold new elections, the opposition party is likely to win, and that will shift politics back to a more neutral and less U.S.-centric foreign policy. In other words, they may undo some of these extraordinarily belligerent maneuvers against China. Remember, he has been going along with all of the U.S. sanctions against China, and essentially he's been destroying South Korea's economy, including the crown jewels of South Korea's industry, which is Samsung Electronics and their chip manufacturing division. Koreans are livid. They're furious with him. And as we've said, he's committing crimes against history. They want him out. They can't take the car keys away from him fast enough. And at the same time, the U.S. wants to keep him in power until at least they can find, the right replacement, so that they can have a nice, transition and ensure that their agenda for Korea continues. The key thing that is most important about Korea, the reason why it's so important for U.S. geopolitical strategy, in particular for war against China, is the United States has operational control over South Korea's military. South Korea has 500,000 active duty troops, incredibly trained, incredibly war ready. As they say, we can fight tonight. And then it has another 3.1 million reserve troops who are also very, very combat capable. It's the world's largest military manpower. And the U.S. gets that at a drop of a hat.
Wait. You said South Korea has the largest military manpower?
Yes. If you
China is 1 billion people.
China has, I think, over 1 million troops. But if you include reserve troops, which in South Korea are very, very combat capable, that's
Yeah.
3.1 million. So if we
Wow.
talk about 3.6 million troops, combat capable and ready to fight, that is the world's largest military manpower.
Wow.
Plus all their, bases and armaments and weaponry. That's a tremendous, threat capacity. And the
Yeah.
U.S. gets that for free. It gets that at a drop of a hat. It has eminent domain over South Korea's military. The moment that it decides that it needs it, the moment that it declares DEFCON 3, the U.S. gets all of South Korea's troops. And so that's a tremendous force multiplier for U.S. war in the Pacific.
Does South Korea get a say in that? Like if the South Korean parliament says, well, no, we're not doing that. I mean,
No.
like, for example, if there's some provocation to war with North Korea, for example, can South Korea turn around and say, well, no, we're not fighting this war. We're not fighting your war for you. Or is it automatic?
I would say that, there are these kind of pretextual things that make it seem like South Korea could have a say. But when push comes to shove, the simple answer is no. South Korea doesn't have any say over it. It does not have control over its own troops. The U.S. says that we only have wartime operational control. But the simple thing is that operational control only applies in war. So that's a pleonasm. That's like saying, I have drive time control of the car and you control it when it's in the garage. It doesn't mean anything. Okay. So the U.S. has control the moment it declares DEFCON 3. And essentially the structure set up so it looks like that there's a kind of a joint command, but actually the command goes straight up to the US FK, UNC, CFC commander-in-chief, who reports directly to the US chief of staff, US joint chiefs of staff, who report directly to the US president. So it's a direct line from the US president to all of South Korea's troops. And South Korea, I'm sorry to say, can't do anything about it. The other thing I'll point out is every single war that the U.S. has been involved in, the South Koreans have been involved in too. Okay, so certainly the Korean War. During the Vietnam War, South Korea sent 340,000 troops to Vietnam. The second,
Are you serious? I did not know that.
It was the second largest deployment after the U.S. itself. After 1972, the South Korean troops outnumbered U.S. troops 2-1 in Vietnam. They were essentially fighting the Vietnam War for the Americans. And, for example, in 2001, in December, I received a call from somebody in South Korea. They said there are 500 South Korean officers going to Afghanistan tomorrow, and they were telling me about this. But remember, in December in Afghanistan, South Korean troops were already in Afghanistan. It wasn't reported, but they were there. They're the Koreans are the first to go and the last to know. And anytime the U.S. goes to war, South Koreans are right there. So even without the OPCON, the South Koreans are always following U.S. military directives. But specifically in the situation of war on the peninsula or in the Pacific, you can be sure that U.S. has total and complete OPCON over all of South Korean troops. And they're also in the process of creating that for Japanese troops as well. They're trying to create a joint command where the U.S. and Japan jointly control Japan's military. But when you have that joint control, it just means the U.S. is controlling it.
That's like, see, I'm an American, and I say that to say I have certain ideas and values of the world, a certain point of view that is kind of ingrained in me just because I live here. We don't have foreign military on our soil at all. We don't believe in having a foreign military base in America. The idea that there would be another foreign power that has control of our military is just outlandish to us. It wouldn't even, like, that doesn't even register that somebody else, a foreign power, would have control over the men and women that have that pledged themselves to the protection of this country. Like the idea that South Korean troops who ostensibly get involved in the military to defend South Korean territory and South Korean interests can be used by a foreign government for the interests of that foreign government is outlandish. And I said the same thing for Europe, where, Europe doesn't seem to have its own security. They don't have their own foreign policy. Like nobody cares about what Scholz has to say in regards to foreign policy of anything around the globe. And I would say the same thing would be true for any of the European leaders. Like it is super weird to me as an American that it's just odd to me. That's just amazing. KJ, man, thank you for this. God, man, you're so informative. I deeply appreciate you joining me. KJ, no, he's a journalist, political analyst, writer, and teacher specializing in the geopolitics of the Asia-Pacific region. He was a contributor to the book, Capitalism on a Ventilator, once censored at Amazon. Once censored. It was now available at iacenter.org. KJ, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. And you can also find me on the China Report on the Breakthrough News channel.
Thank you. The China Report, Breakthrough News channel. Definitely check KJ out. Man, deeply appreciate it, KJ.